Arya thought she was alone in the hot tub until something touched her from below, and it didn't let go. It was a perfect Friday afternoon when Arya, Mira, and Zane arrived at the quiet countryside farmhouse. The place was old but beautiful, surrounded by tall trees and complete silence except for the sound of birds. Arya had been looking forward to this trip for weeks. No city noise, no work stress, just nature, peace, and her two best friends. As they carried their bags inside, Zane joked about how the house looked like something from a mystery movie. Mira rolled her eyes and laughed, but Arya was too busy admiring the backyard. That's when she saw it, a large, round hot tub placed on a wooden deck, hidden between trees. The steam was rising gently from the surface as if it was calling her. "We are definitely getting in there tonight," Arya said with a grin. After dinner, Mira and Zane were tired and wanted to rest, but Arya couldn't resist. She changed into her swimsuit and stepped outside alone. The sky above was dark, filled with stars, and the air was cool. As soon as she slipped into the hot tub, a wave of relaxation washed over her. The warm water hugged her body, and the soft sound of bubbling water calmed her mind. She closed her eyes, tilted her head back, and took a deep breath. For the first time in months, she felt completely at peace. Minutes passed, and the world around her became quiet. The only sound was the water and a few distant crickets, but just when she was about to doze off, she felt something brush against her foot. She opened her eyes quickly and looked down. The water moved gently, but nothing was visible. She shook her head and smiled nervously. "Maybe a leaf," she whispered to herself. But deep down, something felt off. The peace that had filled her just moments ago suddenly faded, and though she was still alone in the tub, the silence now felt too deep, too heavy, like she wasn't really alone anymore. Arya stayed still, her eyes scanning the surface of the water, heart racing slightly faster than before. She told herself it was probably nothing, a twig, a leaf, maybe even her imagination, but that strange feeling on her foot, what had felt too real. She tried to relax again, leaning back, focusing on the sound of the bubbles, but her mind wouldn't let go of what had just happened. A soft wind rustled the trees, and the steam from the tub swirled around her face. Just as she began to calm herself, she felt it again, a sudden cold touch brushing her ankle, this time firmer. She gasped and jerked her leg away, splashing the water loudly. Her breathing quickened, and she stared into the bubbling pool with wide eyes. The surface was still, but something was definitely wrong. The warmth of the tub no longer felt comforting, it felt like a trap. She slowly began to shift toward the edge, ready to get out, when something gripped her foot. It wasn't strong, not enough to hurt, but it was icy cold and unmistakably like fingers. Arya let out a sharp cry and kicked violently, slipping against the side of the tub and falling backward into the water. Her head went under, her head floating around her face as panic surged through her body. She fought her way back to the surface, coughing and gasping, water in her nose, eyes stinging. She grabbed the edge with both hands and dragged herself out, heart pounding. Sitting on the wooden deck, drenched and shivering, she looked back at the tub. It was calm again to calm. No movement, no sound, only steam rising slowly into the night air. She stood up and ran inside, dripping water across the wooden floor. Mira and Zane jumped to their feet when they saw her. "What happened?" Mira asked, eyes wide. Arya's lips trembled as she whispered, "There's something in the water, something cold, and it grabbed me." Silence filled the room. No one laughed. Even Zane looked scared. Something wasn't right with that tub. And now, they all felt it. After a few minutes of tense silence, Zane finally spoke. "Maybe it was a pipe or a jet in the tub," he said, though his voice lacked confidence. Arya shook her head quickly. "No, it wasn't a machine. It felt like a hand, freezing, and it pulled me down." Mira stayed quiet, her eyes full of concern. That night, no one slept well. Every creak in the old farmhouse sounded louder, and every gust of wind made the windows rattle like whispers in the dark. The next morning, Arya refused to go near the backyard, but Zane, still trying to stay calm, said he'd check the hot tub himself. Mira went with him, just to be sure. The water was still warm, bubbling like always, but as Zane looked closer, he noticed something odd. Along the inner wall of the tub, just under the surface, there were deep scratch marks, 5 long lines, as if claws had dragged against the plastic. "These weren't here before," Mira said, her voice shaky. "I cleaned the tub yesterday. It was spotless." Zane reached into the water with a long wooden stick, gently moving the bubbles aside. Something small and shiny rested at the bottom. Carefully, he hooked it and pulled it out. It was a bracelet, old silver, rusted in places, but still whole. Arya stepped outside just as Zane held it up, her face turned pale. That's my sister's," she whispered. "Lena. She had one just like that." Mira looked at her. "I thought you said your sister drowned." Arya nodded slowly, her voice barely a breath. 6 years ago at a lake. Her body was never found." No one said a word. The hot tub bubbled quietly beside them, hiding whatever secret it still held. Suddenly, the warm air around them felt cold, and the wind passed through the trees like a warning. Mira placed the bracelet down carefully, on the deck, as if afraid it might move again. Whatever had grabbed Arya last night, it wasn't a dream, and it knew who she was. The atmosphere in the farmhouse had completely changed. What started as a peaceful weekend had turned into something darker, heavier, and harder to explain. None of them touched the hot tub again that day. The bracelet now sat inside a glass jar on the kitchen counter, like some cursed object no one wanted to be near. Arya barely spoke. Her thoughts were lost, somewhere deep, somewhere in the past. That night, rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier, tapping against the windows like fingers asking to come in. Everyone stayed indoors. Zane tried to keep the mood light by playing music, but no one really listened. Mira sat by the fireplace, staring at the flames. Arya went upstairs early, saying she had a headache. Around midnight, a loud noise jolted Mira and Zane from their silence, the sound of a window slamming shut upstairs. They rushed up, calling Arya's name. Her room was dark, the window wide open, curtains soaked from the rain. Arya was standing in the corner, staring at the floor. "Are you okay?" Mira asked softly. Arya slowly pointed to the wooden floor near her bed. Small, wet footprints trailed from the window to where she stood, as if a barefoot child had walked into the room. The prints stopped right in front of her, like something had been standing just inches away. Zane's face lost all color. "You didn't come from the window, right?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Arya shook her head. "I was asleep, but I felt a cold breath on my face. When I opened my eyes, the window slammed shut by itself." Mira stepped closer to the prints. They were real, fresh, and far too small to belong to any of them. "Rain couldn't have done this," Zane whispered. "Whatever it is, it came for her." They all stared at the last footprint, the one closest to Arya, and it was slightly smeared, like it had turned just before vanishing. Whatever had come in, had stood there, watched her, and left, but not without a message. It wasn't finished yet. The next morning was gray and silent, the kind of silence that felt too deep, too unnatural. No birds, no wind, just stillness. Arya hadn't slept. She sat at the dining table, wrapped in a blanket, staring blankly at the bracelet now lying on the wooden surface. "I dreamed of her last night," she whispered. "Lena, she was standing in the water calling me, but she wasn't smiling. She looked sad, like she needed something." Mira poured her some tea with trembling hands. "Maybe she's trapped. Maybe that place, the tub, the house, it's holding her somehow." Zane, who had remained quiet all morning, suddenly stood up. "We need to end this. Let's burn the bracelet. Maybe if we let it go, she'll be free." Arya hesitated but nodded slowly. That evening, as the sky turned orange, they gathered near the fire pit in the backyard. Arya placed the bracelet on the flames. It hissed sharply as if resisting, then slowly turned black. The fire crackled louder than usual, the wind picking up around them. For a moment they all felt the ground shift like a sigh from the earth itself. That night, the house felt lighter, like something had been lifted. Arya slept deeply for the first time in days. But just before sunrise, a strange thing happened. As the sky turned from black to blue, Zane stepped outside to get fresh air. The hot tub, which had been empty since the day before, was full again, warm, bubbling as if nothing had ever happened. But the water was crystal clear, calm, and undisturbed. On the wooden edge of the tub, something small caught his eye. He stepped closer. It was a second bracelet, just like the first one. Only this time the name engraved on it wasn't Lena. It was Arya. Zane froze, his heart sinking. He turned to run inside, shouting her name. But when he reached her room, the bed was empty, the blanket was cold, the window wide open, and on the floor fresh footprints leading out. Toward the water. Arya was gone, and whatever was in the tub wasn't finished after all. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts. *Subscribe to Deep Epoch for more spine-tingling stories every day.